Merry Christmas. Eve. Hi, my name is Sam Seok Chondosanim, or you can call me Pastor Sam. I am the elementary ministry children's pastor here. And at this church, we have a small tradition that the new ministry staff members gives the message for Christmas Eve service. So here I am. I get to celebrate the new tradition with you. And that's great because that's what the holidays and traditions are for. I just want to give a quick note before I get started. You're going to see a lot of images, some that have to do with the message and some that are just up there because I think they're really interesting. So if you do have a problem being distracted by a lot of pictures, I just have a suggestion. You don't have to look up. But if you must, when you get bored of listening to me and looking at my face, feel free to look up and enjoy my attempt to entertain you for the next 15 or so minutes. And most of us love Christmas traditions, right? Most of us. And there are all kinds of traditions in the world. Here in America, we celebrate the tradition of decorating a Christmas tree with ornaments and lights. And even in our neighborhoods, we have the tradition of decorating our houses with lights and even competing with each other on whose house is the most brightest, most colorful, and even the most loud decoration. I want to share with you a little bit about my family, just to help you get to know me a little better. A tradition that we celebrate in our home during this time of the year is that we're always listening to the Elvis Christmas album. We listen to a lot of albums, but there's a lot of Elvis going on at this time of the year. It's a good way for us to be reminded about Christmas. And that's what traditions are for in the holidays, right? To bring us to a place of family, friends, memories, and community. And people all around the world at this time, they're celebrating traditions. And I actually found a bunch of really fun and interesting ones from the internet. And I just wanted to share with you a few of them. And the first awesome tradition comes from Venezuela, in a small city called Caracas in the northern part of Venezuela. You see, every Christmas Eve, the people go to church early in the morning. It's a pretty normal tradition, right? But for reasons only known to them, they go to church on roller skates. And they close off all the roads so that people can go to church and back safely. And I'm glad we don't celebrate that here because I don't know how to roller skate. A second really interesting and kind of funny one that I found is from Austria in Europe. And their tradition is the character called Krampus. And this is kind of funny, really. And Krampus is the evil alternative of St. Nicholas. They kind of go hand in hand. So Krampus is this beast-like creature that roams the city at night, and he captures children and punishes them. And St. Nicholas, he's the one who gives gifts to the ones who have been behaving and have been nice. And Krampus is the one who kidnaps kids in his sack, and he tortures and punishes them for not behaving. That's one way to do it, right? Another really interesting, and I think it's a pretty impressive tradition, is found in Japan. They don't celebrate Christmas like the rest of the world does. They have the tradition of giving gifts and decorating with lights. But a tradition that has emerged over the years is that on Christmas Day, the meal of choice is Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they have it all over the advertisements. And really, it's pretty impressive tradition for me. Because think about it. You have this whole country that came together, and they all agreed that the meaning of Christmas can be found in a KFC dinner. And I think that's kind of true. I think it's pretty impressive. But one of my most favorite traditions from around the world that I feel has a great functional aspect of the spirit of Christmas is another one seen in Europe at this time. And in certain parts of Europe, the nativity scenes always has this one extra character. And this extra character emerged in southern Spain around 18th and 19th century and is called El Cagané, which literally means the defecator, or the pooper if you want. And El Cagané is usually a figure wearing a traditional Catalan red peasant cap with his pants pulled down, squatting, and defecating. And this figure is always placed in the corner of Spanish and Southern Italian nativity scenes. Now, you may wonder why such a crude figure would be placed in such a holy setting. But in many ways, the fact that the nativity scene has become so sanitized and clean is a more important issue at hand. Everything about giving birth is messy. And the story of the birth of Christ is a messy tale full of political schemes, forced migrations, unsanitary conditions, and dirty environments. The Kagane, although cute, fun, and satirical, is there to remind us of these things. To remind us that the story of Christmas itself is a messy tale of contingency and vulnerability. And at this time of the year, around the holiday season, with all the focus on the gifts and the parties and going here and there, and putting on a good face to make it so sanitized, when in actuality, it is the very opposite. A Catalan writer by the name of Joan Baril says this: the Kagane, which that's how you pronounce it in the Latin, the Kagane is a hidden figure and yet is always sought out like the lost link between transcendence and contingency. Without the Kagane, there would be no nativity scene, but rather a liturgy. And there would be no real country, but just the false landscape of a model. So the link between the season of Christmas and the mystery of Christmas is being captured for us here in a figure that most would regard as out of place in such a holy setting in the nativity scene. But perhaps that is what is missing from most of the holy scenes in our lives. The mess and the dirtiness that is necessary to highlight the transformative possibilities of life. Holiness is not the absence of mess or humanity or dirt. It is the transformation of what is considered unclean and profane. Christmas isn't all about being clean and sanitized and putting on a good face, pretending it's okay. No, that kind of Christmas is not in real life. Christmas is about how the God of love has come to be with us to change the world through a child that is born in the dirty and unclean and profane. I love this quote by the songwriter Nick Cave. It says, "We should never trust a love song that has not breathed the air of good and evil." If there's no dirt, it's not really love. It's a sanitized version. In our passage tonight in Philippians, we see this highlighted even more in how Christ shows that the divine can breathe the air of good and evil, yet love as God has loved. The figure of Christ comes to the world in the form of a slave, a very low position. And this hot mess of an existence in life is emphasized even more by being born in a feeding trough and being wrapped in leftover pieces of cloth, born in a small, insignificant town. And the central image of Christmas, it gets lost in all the busyness of the season. And some of you might be saying, whoa, Pastor Sam, just calm down. I'm just here to have fun. I want to party and celebrate and give gifts. Why can't we celebrate? Well, we should celebrate and have parties and gifts. But sometimes we need a reminder, like El Kagane, that as we celebrate the birth of the Christ, let us not forget that Christmas is about how the divine has come to be with us here in our lives, in the rough and the messy parts of our lives that we tend to push away to enjoy the holidays. And rejoicing is needed in the most urgent way, because the God of love, peace, and reconciliation has come into the hidden areas of our lives and the messy parts of our lives to empower us to experience Emmanuel. God has come to our grief from a lost loved one in our lives. God has come to our shattered dreams and failures in life. God has come to the sadness and anxiety that we just can't explain. God has come to our loneliness and depression that we deal with every day and are afraid to keep it to ourselves because it is uncouth to talk about it or to show these things. God has come into the broken relationships in our lives. God has come into the burnt bridges in our lives to empower us and give us strength and humility and creativity to heal those wounds. And God has come to remove the shame and embarrassment in our lives and is with us in that mess. And God has come into all the small areas of our lives that are messy. And this is Christmas in real life. Let's not forget the true reason for rejoicing. For the Christ child would not have to come to a sanitized and fake life where pursuing holy transcendence has just become an excuse to avoid, ignore, and repress the messiness in our lives. This Christmas we rejoice, for the God of love is with us in our mess, and we celebrate by showing others that God really is with us. So I want to suggest to all of you, when you go home these holiday seasons, call a family member. Call an old friend you haven't talked to in a while. Sit with someone who might be going through a loss or someone who is in pain. That's how you experience Emmanuel. Recount the blessings in your life and how all the ways that God has been with you all year long. Because God has come into our lives. God has come through the surface level where all the lights and happy faces are and is present with us in our pain and in the dark corners of our lives. So this holiday season, rejoice. For this is Christmas in real life. I just want to wait for this. May we pray.